So I'm going to start with our first speaker, Gerri Griswold. Gerri Griswold is Director of Administration and Development at the White Memorial Conservation Center in Litchfield, Connecticut. She's handled bats for over 30 years as a wildlife rehabilitator and educator, licensed by the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the United States Department of Agriculture to keep and exhibit non-releasable bats, and more recently, porcupines for education. For 25 years, Gerri Griswold has served as the morning voice of traffic on numerous radio stations in Connecticut. In 2010, she launched a travel company, Croomy Travel LLC, taking small groups of extraordinary adults on extraordinary trips to Iceland. Thank you, Gerri.
Thank you so much for having me. Around the potted palm. I love the flowers, they're so beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today, and thank you to Cynthia and the Rex Brasher Association for inviting me, because when Cynthia first contacted me about coming here, I'm just a junkie. I mean, I am literally a Rex junkie. I'm just crazy about him, and blah, 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 Rex this and Rex that, and don't even get me on the topic, because I'll put you in a corner and speak ad nauseum about him forever. And I didn't feel I was a qualified speaker. But Cynthia assured me I was, and I trust her. And so here I am today. My introduction to Rex actually came kind of late, only within the last several years. But I wish I could see. I've got foggy eyes and old 66-year-old woman eyes, and just want to see my notes here. I decided to go off the cuff and extemporaneous today, which is a very dangerous thing to do. But that's where I feel most comfortable, when I'm not scripted. So I entitled this program, Rex Brasher, No Boundaries, Infinite Possibilities. I could go and give you the usual facts about Rex. Many of you already know those, and that would just be blah, blah, blah. But I think, you know, intermingled is an incredible story of tenacity, an incredible inspirational story that is something that we need to promise young people today, that we're going to give them this story. And it should be a story of hope for them too. Because what Rex Brasher represents to me is somebody who actually had a dream that many people said was foolish, and he realized it. It was unthinkable. I still think about what Rex accomplished, and it just blows my mind. And I feel that that is something that today, it's a story of hope, and it's a story of hard work, and it's a story that ends up with a very happy ending, or an even happier one, once the Rex Brasher Association realizes all of their goals at Chickadee Valley. But especially I feel it's something, Rex is somebody for people of all ages, but I feel young people today especially need his story, they need his vision, and they need his passion. When I find somebody who doesn't have passion, I just don't get it. I always say I'm going to be really angry when I die, because there's so much left to do. I'm so passionate about life. Rex was so passionate about life. So when I found him, that's when things really started turning. It's like, wow, this man sings to me. He speaks my language. I can't see this way and I can't see the other way. I'm kind of blind. So let me do this. All right. I'm going to start with some quotes. They're going to be intermingled through the presentation. And the first one is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. There are many who are living far below their possibilities because they are continually handing over their individualities to others. Amen, Ralph. And so many of us just follow the crowd. They're lemmings jumping off a cliff, and feel that these individual passions that they have could be suppressed or stomped upon by somebody. Rex Brasher was one of these people that was an individual. We all know that, and I thought that was a very fitting quote for an opening. I fell in love with Rex over this print, which I'm happy to say I own. I left my husband after 32 years of marriage. That was a pretty big deal. And I landed up in a cottage up on Doolittle Lake in Norfolk, Connecticut. It was the most incredible place, and very odd, you know, leaving a 32-year marriage is kind of a daunting thing to do, and my dog and I were at a cottage, and in the morning we would go swimming, and who would pop up but 3 loons? It was unbelievable. They would come and swim next to us, about 10 feet away, just enough so they were cautious. And every single day those loons would pop up, and every single night they would sing to me. And I'd never experienced anything like that. So naturally I decided to get a print of loons to go over my fireplace. And I went on the internet and probably Googled something like cool loon prints, something like that. And all these loon prints pop up, and this one pops up. And that's my print. There wasn't even any shopping or comparison. This was my print, and I bought it. And then after I bought it, I started reading about the man who made it, Rex Brasher, and Brasher, which of course is what everybody calls him until they know it's Brasher. And I thought, when I started reading his story, that I was the cat that ate the canary, and I pranced into White Memorial with my Rex Brasher print, and I put it in front of the face of Carrie Schved, our education director, and it's like, oh my God, this guy is the most amazing thing in the world, and he did this, that, and the other thing. Carrie's like, yeah, Rex. I have 6 of his prints, and I went to the show at the Kent Library, and I go, what? Carrie's a real birder, and I love birds, but bats are my thing. So if Rex had painted bats, I had been all over Carrie. But Carrie and I started this whole cheering squad about Rex, including having Janet Regan, who was the president of the association, come to White Memorial and speak. Debbie and Melody joined us that day for a luncheon. And it just kind of continued on this mutual passion that Carrie and I have for Rex, and a feeling that we wanted to do something, and even if we were only the bullhorns, to let people know his story, that maybe something good could come of it. And that was pretty much it. And I was hook, line, and sinker into him, and I ended up buying a couple of more of his prints. When I have an art history degree, and I know that's what happens, you know, I became a chef after NYU, and that's what happens when you get an art history degree. And through many, many different channels, I became a chef, and then I became a broadcaster full-time, and then I ended up in conservation, all because of bats. And when you fall in love with an artist, it's always the last name. It's Degas, it's Géricault, it's Dali, it's Stubbs, it's Monet, it's Sargent. But when you fall in love with Rex Brasher, he's your personal friend, and it's always Rex. I would never even dream of referring to him as Brasher. It's Rex. So he grew up, of course, and was born in Long Island, in Brooklyn. And his father and mother were just wonderful people. Philip Brasher was a stockbroker. From some of my readings, maybe in Milton Brasher's book, maybe he was a little unfocused, but one of the things he was really focused on was boat building and birds, and his wild passion for ornithology and for boat building just bled into Rex. And their mother, Laura, was a homemaker pretty much, but she was a seamstress as well. So Philip indulged Rex in these beautiful sorties all over Long Island, looking for birds, shooting birds, stuffing birds. Taxidermy was a big thing back then. And they just had the best time together, and Rex absolutely doted on his father. As I said, boat building was a really big thing, and in one portion of Rex's life, he had a boat named the Phalarope that he sailed all the way down the East Coast, all the way down into Florida. So he was quite a sailor himself. This is actually one of Philip's taxidermy pieces. Now, I'm so crazy that when I read that these were at Yale, I immediately started digging around my contacts at Yale to find them and hope to see them. And so I contacted Michael Anderson, the preparator of collections at Yale, and Michael sent me to Krzysztof Zyskowski, who was the curator of vertebrate mammals at the Yale Peabody Museum and at Yale University. And Krzysztof said that they're gone. They may have been there, but they've disappeared, which breaks my heart. These are things that people just did, whether they were doing study skins, where they would just kill a bird, stuff them, and keep them in a drawer, or in the best case scenario, they would put the birds in positions and form them to look real. If you go to FDR's house in Hyde Park, New York, as soon as you walk into his home, you're flanked by taxidermy birds that President Roosevelt shot and stuffed. It was just something that people did long before there were lots of the environmental movement began. And this, of course, is a big problem for many of our birds who were slaughtered for hats and finery and in some cases became extinct. Philip was also a contemporary of this man, John James Audubon. And John James Audubon, of course, was a god to people in ornithology and into art. Audubon owned a piece of property above 155th Street in New York called Minnie's Land. It was named after Minnie is a Scottish word for mother, and his children called their mother Minnie, so they called it Minnie's Land. And so Philip heard that Audubon was going to be up at Minnie's Land and made an appointment to see him to talk about birds. And Philip was no slouch. They had political contacts in the city and law contacts in the city, and of course he was a stockbroker himself, so it wasn't like he was just somebody off the street. And he made, can you imagine, in the early 1800s, making this trip from Brooklyn by horse and carriage all the way up to Minnie's Land on the upper west side of New York to visit this great man. He came to the door with his invitation in hand and basically was pushed away by a servant. But not before he actually saw Audubon way back in a room painting, saying, I'm not going to talk to that guy today, I don't have time. Here is a dead bird hanging. Philip kept this story under his hat for many, many years. Here's a picture of Minnie's Land on the map. I love things like this. Then I started going down a rabbit hole about Minnie's Land, but this is not about Audubon today. It's gone anyway. And this is actually what the house looked like, kind of a fairy tale fantasy version. And Philip was very upset about Audubon. His impression of Audubon was diminished that day, but he kept the story to himself. Here's a quote by Michael J. Fox: "I see possibilities in everything. For everything that's taken away, something of greater value has been given." Philip Brasher died in 1879. Rex was just a boy, and this man was his son's shining light. So before Philip died, he told Rex the story of the snub from Audubon. And Rex was 8 years old, and Rex resolved at that time he was going to go out and paint more birds than Audubon, and he was going to paint them from life, and he was going to paint every single bird in North America. And once again, this incredible dream, and a father who never stopped on that dream. Philip supported him. They spent the last years of their lives together, birding, doing all the things that they loved together, and then of course Philip died, and Rex kind of became the man of the house. Laura could not make a lot of money being a seamstress, so it began with Rex, stealing fruit and putting food on the table that way, to betting on horses, and he was extremely good at it, and also from getting a job at Tiffany & Company as an engraver. And that was sort of the beginning of the Rex Brasher that we know. Of course, the biggest story about Rex was making a $10,000 win on a 50-to-1 bet that financed his trips around the United States. But Rex did many things. He was so committed to this painting 874 birds. He did anything he had to do to make it happen. And it was a mantra in my life too, growing up poor. You gotta do what you gotta do to get from A to B. Well, Rex was looking A to Z. He was looking at this big vision, and he would work on farms, he would build houses, he would bet on horses. He did anything he had to do to fulfill that dream. It's another reason why I love him so much, but he was especially good at betting on horses. And he was a great storyteller. Several of the jobs he took purposely were on boats, so that when he had his downtime, he could actually paint birds from life and write detailed notes. And he was especially good with these acute observations of birds' colors, their behaviors, their habitats. And we learn a lot from the birds and trees of North America about critical habitats today that birds need. And also, he witnessed birds that are now gone, extinct species. And what he did that Audubon didn't do is painting them in their natural element so that we know what critical habitats are for these specific birds. One of my favorites, the long-tailed duck, now it was called the old squaw. He would go out and on the boat, and take his notes, and then he would ship them back to New York to his niece, Marie, and she was the love of his life, and she was a pistol. She was an incredibly accomplished woman. I can't remember, was she the secretary to the mayor of New York or the governor of New York, but she was a really incredible woman and a staunch supporter, and even helped finance Rex sometimes when money was getting low and he wasn't making good bets. Marie was there for him. He would make these meticulous notes, do these incredible sketches, and then ship them home to Marie. And then after a couple of years or so, Rex would surface in Brooklyn, and that's when he started doing his paintings. Whoops, what am I doing here? I broke it, Matthew. I didn't do anything, I swear. I swear there's some more good stuff coming up. I'm pressing it forward. How did you do that?
Move the mouse. Move the mouse.
I don't know. That's where you're going.
Okay, that's where I'm going. And on the backs of the birds and trees of North America are all of those detailed bits and bobs that he collected from observing birds in the wild. Just think about it. Think about what he was doing. Sitting out there, at nature, we know as bird watchers, Angela Dimmitt, nature doesn't come to us. You have to be so patient. You have to be so patient. It's only when you turn on the TV today that nature is handed to you. But Rex is out there in the desert. He's out there in Arctic climates. He's everywhere doing this thing, coming back home, painting these birds. And again, things like the passenger pigeon. I do a whole series of lectures on extinct species. He actually was born just a couple of years before the Labrador duck became extinct. The ivory-billed woodpecker. It was a great story how he got to see this bird. I'm going to try to do this on my own now. So I'm getting up. Do you see this that I'm seeing? There we go. Look at me, huh? The Eskimo curlew, all birds that are extinct that Rex experienced in their natural habitats before they were gone forever, and the beautiful Carolina parakeet. Critics, mathematicians, scientists, and busybodies want to classify everything, marking the boundaries and limits. In art, there is room for all possibilities. Pablo Picasso. Rex painted 400 paintings and then didn't like them and ripped them up and burned them. Marie's, no, you can't. And he said, nope, they're not perfect. I don't like the way I'm doing feathers. Nope, they're going. Painted 400 more, still wasn't keen on the feathers. No, I'm gonna burn them. He burns them. He burns them. I would take them. No, he didn't want anything that wasn't absolute perfection out there. He still wasn't happy with the way he was painting feathers. He says some sapsuckers, the American woodcock, one of my favorite birds before that, the ruddy duck. The behaviors, the mating behaviors. Audubon, I'm sorry to throw Audubon under the bus, but his passenger pigeon picture is so wrong. It's not accurate at all. Go take a look. It's beautiful, but it's all romanticized. It's not accurate. It's not what those birds were doing. This is one of my favorite of the sandhill crane with their mating ritual in the background. Rex had it all. He was at the American Museum of Natural History. He had a liaison there that allowed him to go in and paint the study skins, not actually physically paint them, but look at them. And Rex kept on striving to make the feathers on the birds what he wanted them to be, like he wanted them to be as realistic as possible. In walks this man, Luis Agassiz Fuertes, who was a couple of years younger than Rex, but the heir to Audubon's throne. Fuertes' work is absolutely amazing, mind-blowing, and it's all up at Cornell. And Lewis said to him, these are really beautiful, but I think I can help you. They became very good friends. And in a way, Fuertes became Rex's mentor. Rex, by the way, was never trained. He had no training at all, nothing. That's another thing about him. No training in painting and art at all. And Fuertes comes in, they became very good friends, and Rex learned how to do feathers then, and then he was on his roll, and that's where everything started moving. He didn't have to destroy any more paintings, and off he went. He got a $700 commission for doing the illustrations in this book, The Birds of North Carolina. He and Marie were getting kind of sick of life in New York, the drudgery, the people, the noise, And with this little $700, he said, I want to go and buy a farm. And he went up north to Kent, Connecticut with his $700 in hand. And with that commission, he bought Chickadee Valley. He looks so bored in this picture, doesn't he? He's like, oh, well, I finished my life work. That's what he did at Chickadee Valley. By 1924, he had finished painting 874 species, and there were subspecies as well, numbering into like 1,200. And his work was done. He was 55 years old. Now what am I going to do? Marie went with him, of course. The house, by the way, had no electricity, no plumbing. It was wood heated. It was good enough for them. And he started doing little carvings, and kids would come by. He was pretty famous at that point, and he would sell and harangue people who didn't give him enough money for the carvings. And the carvings, the woodpecker and the parrot are two of the things that he was carving and people could buy. And then Marie said, you know, Rex, he's kind of bored. She said, you're such a good writer. Why don't you write a book? Oh yeah, sure. He's playing with the kids in the yard. They're having a really great time. He was quite a character, and there was a good steady stream of visitors coming to see him. But then he wrote The Secrets of the Friendly Woods. Now, I don't know if you know about this, you other Rex junkies out there, but I have a couple of copies of this book, and they're easily acquired, not for a lot of money. But now online, there are podcasts of all the stories. These are all things that happened to Rex in Chickadee Valley, and now I'm kind of mad that I wasn't the one that did the podcast. I was really bummed. So I'm like, Lord, I should have done this ages ago. So you can go online now if you don't want to read the book. You can listen to the stories on podcasts. More and more stuff is appearing about Rex, which makes me happy. And the prints are becoming more expensive. So if you want them, you better go and find them now. So 1926, this was published and was critically acclaimed. But all of his paintings are sitting in drawers, and the public's not being exposed to them. What are we going to do? He couldn't do a big, glossy coffee table book it was cost prohibitive. So he came up with this outrageous, impossible idea of hand coloring prints and putting them together in 12 volumes of books called The Birds and Trees of North America. And he was going to hand color. And he did hand color 90,000 prints. He figured out a way to airbrush these birds, how to stencil them so that they look like these volumes that you're seeing today. They're perfection. If they weren't perfection, he would have ripped them up. And he had other people do the backgrounds for them. And he had 100 subscriptions that he sold. And then the stock market crashed, and a lot of subscribers pulled out. He had at Chickadee Valley a little assembly line where he would just do print after print after print. I believe he worked 10 to 15 hours a day painting these things. And he lost his eyesight when he was in his early 90s. It's just, it confounds me. But he had such a drive to do this. Ultimately, the volumes, some of them were split apart. That's why we have access to these prints today for affordable prices through reputable printmakers. So be careful when you go out that you're getting a real print and not some fly-by-night person selling it to you. I purchased mine through Pantique. They're a dealer in Florida. But now, complete books volumes of The Birds and Trees of North America are found at the Beinecke Library at UConn, of course. And maybe some in private collections, but I don't even think we know where they all are. And that really is a shame. And where are his paintings? This is The Birds and Trees in North America. Every single one signed by him. It was almost like an Encyclopedia Britannica on steroids subscription that he created. But the most important thing is, again, when you buy one of those prints, he touched it. It was Rex's. He did that. He did those birds on his own. All of these birds that he painted from life, many of them here today. When I walked in the room here today, that was like Brad Pitt laying on the table there for me. Or whoever it is that you love whether it's somebody in music or whatever, that is a superstar stuff. To see The Birds and Trees of North America laid out like that, I say hallelujah, that's incredible. Swifts, the ruffed grouse, which I've seen at Chickadee Valley. And this is just incredible because it's one of my favorite Rexes and almost everybody's favorite, the Roadrunner, where when he was observing these birds, he saw them do things that had never been documented before. He saw a Roadrunner kill a rattlesnake. I own this one, I'm happy to say. The nighthawk, common nighthawk, is one of my favorite birds with a beautiful spring bloodroot. And this bird is special to me in Iceland. It's a golden plover. It's their robin. When the first golden plover appears in Iceland every year, it makes headlines. It's the top headline in all the newspapers, and they do have newspapers still in Iceland. And I was able to pick this up for $80. It's a deal of the century. Unbelievable. So he had the paintings, and he gifted them to the state of Connecticut with the caveat that they would build a museum for them. And this is a huge thing because he did have a reputation. So this was a rather big thing. And then nothing was being done about the museum because World War I happened, and so he took the paintings back. And then finally, in 1941, the state of Connecticut bought Rex's life work, all 874 paintings, for about $74,000, roughly a little bit more than $85 a painting. And several years later, they started being displayed in installments at the Harkness Memorial down in New London, whatever the other name is, across the river from it, Groton, New London. Beautiful, beautiful building, but not climate controlled, and the salt air was beginning to really take its toll on the paintings. So the University of Connecticut got the paintings, and now they were all put into drawers. When they opened up the Harkness display, Rex was still alive, and he wouldn't go to the opening. He said, "Yeah, I've already seen the paintings." I don't think it was exactly what he envisioned for them, but at least they were in place that the public could see. But today, they rest in archives, in cases, in drawers at the Dodd Center at UConn. And I really feel strongly that this man doesn't belong in a drawer at the University of Connecticut. I'm grateful for the protection the paintings are given, but this man is owned by us. He's owned by the United States. He's owned by the world. Everybody should be sharing him. He should have his museum, or at least a place where the paintings can be displayed properly. His story needs to be told. He is truly a god among artists. And I'm not talking about avian artists, I'm talking about artists in general. His story is one of the greatest stories in art, in Americana, and just in general. It's a story of hope, it's a story of tenacity. It's just the most remarkable story I've ever encountered in my life. And he was my next door neighbor practically. I can't believe that I can actually drive to Kent and there's a stone house there that Rex helped build. And he's just a hop, skip, and jump now. Now he's in New York State, but originally he was Kent. I can't believe that he belongs to us, of course, the founder of the Kent Art Association. In typical Rex fashion, he couldn't even die on a normal day. He died on Leap Day in February. There was nothing normal about this man. Everything about him was extraordinary. So the pandemic happened, and in the beginning of the shutdown, the lockdown, you go 6 feet apart, everybody's terrified, as well they should be. I'm sitting at home in my rainy cottage, and on a very rainy, cold, awful March day, my dog Bradley and I jumped in the car and went to Gaylordsville to look for Rex. And we found him. And in typical fashion, his grave is so humble, just as he was. I just can't believe it wasn't decorated with flowers, and if there had been a flower shop open there, I certainly would have, put flowers all over his grave. And it's a place I like to make a pilgrimage to, on and off. It's not too terribly far from where I work. It's not even far from my home. And I knew that he was 6 feet under, so I was safe, and there was nobody 6 feet away from me. We were fine. I was just so pleased to go and meet him and to thank him for everything that he gave to me and that he has given to us. So I close with a really wonderful quote from Leonard Cohen. A saint is someone who has achieved, I can't even read this with my glasses, a remote human possibility. It is impossible to say what that possibility is. I think it has something to do with the energy of love. Yeah? Passion for birds, love of his father, love of nature, love of life. These are the things that define my friend Rex Brasher. Thank you.